A client of mine was recently diagnosed with osteoporosis. This lady's in her late 60s, and here's how we've adapted her exercise program in order to help manage her condition. A key consideration when it comes to osteoporosis and exercise is spinal fractures. So how do we go about staying safe and keeping the spine protected when we're exercising? I think a really good way to get started with this is by developing and establishing good hip hinge mechanics. But what is hip hinge mechanics and how can we learn it? Hip hinging is all about transferring weight and load into the posterior muscle chain. So this is the muscle chain running down the back line of the body. This is really useful when we're exercising, but you can also transfer this into your everyday life as well. A good way to practice and learn this is to set up with a chair in front of you, feet about hip width, outside edges of the feet are parallel. From here, you're just going to place the fingertips onto the chair. You're going to maintain a nice neutral spinal position and slowly take the hips back behind the heels. Notice my spinal position as I do this. It doesn't change much. I'm not rounding forward and loading the spine. I'm transferring the weight and the load into the back line of the body. Hamstrings, glutes, and the lower back muscles all working together as an integrated muscle chain. This enables us to protect the spine and massively reduce the risk of spinal fractures. When it comes to managing osteoporosis with exercise, one of the principles that we want to think about is building strength. This is strengthening the tissue, ligaments, tendons, muscles, and even the bones themselves. But how do we go about doing this safely? I think a really good principle that we can apply here is something called time under tension. Okay, so how do we actually go about using the principle of time under tension with our exercises? Now you can apply this to a lot of different exercises, but it works really well with a squat. So let's use that as an example. We're going to set up with the feet a little bit wider than hip width. We're going to angle the feet so they're pointing outwards ever so slightly. We're going to use that hip hinge that we were practicing earlier as the beginning of the movement. So we hinge at the hips, we slowly come down through space, we pause at the bottom for about 3 to 5 seconds, and then we slowly come back up. We're not going to come all the way up though. We're going to stop here and then slowly come back down again. What this does is it removes the rest period from the exercise. It puts more stress and demand on the tissues, and ultimately that's how we're going to get stronger. When I'm working with a client who's been diagnosed with osteoporosis, a really key part of their program is going to be some form of impact exercises. Now there are lots of options when it comes to impact exercises, but here's one example that will help get you started. So one really easy way to do this is by bringing the feet together, driving through the toes, coming up onto the toes, heels come up off the ground, and then from here, allowing the heels to just drop to the floor, creating some gentle impact. When you come up onto the toes, be careful not to roll outwards too much, as this might put a little bit of strain and stress into the ligaments on the outside of the foot.